Today I'm going to be going against everything that your physiotherapist has ever told you and explain why your glutes aren't actually the issue and that it's actually probably your hamstrings that are causing your troubles. Now, as physios, we're usually pretty guilty of just treating the area that's actually painful. Lots of massage, trigger pointing, acupuncture, but almost all research suggests that this doesn't actually fix anything. Okay, it feels great. But when it comes to any lower limb pain, be it plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendinopathy, fat pad syndrome, we need to start looking a little bit further up. Now let's start with the glutes. Okay, the glutes get pretty much all of the blame from pretty much every physiotherapist for pretty much everything. Almost every client that I ever treat comes to me telling me that their previous physio or previous therapist has told them that they've got weak or switched off glutes. And today I'm going to explain to you why actually that's probably not the case. The glutes aren't to blame, and in fact that it's more likely your hamstrings or your lower hamstrings that are causing your lower limb issue. But first of all, let's talk about those peachy glutes of yours. The glute muscles, while sexualized by pretty much every media outlet, are actually an amazing feat of evolutionary engineering. They're a huge muscle group, optimally positioned, capable of generating massive amounts of force repeatedly for relatively long periods of time, but often for different reasons they don't. But is this actually the glutes' fault? Well, a simple answer is no, probably not. Now, without wanting to go too deep into biomechanics, it's probably not that you have weak glutes or that your glutes have been turned off, but rather it's actually your hamstrings that are killing you. But they're probably just causing a cascade of events that have led to your foot, ankle, shin or calf becoming overloaded and painful. Biomechanics. All movement of the human body comes from transfer of force from one joint to another. When we take a step during running or walking, force transfers from the foot into the ankle, into the shin, into the knee, into the hips, into the glutes, and it keeps going further up, but we'll stop. For that transfer of force to occur efficiently, a number of different things need to happen. Again, I won't go into too much detail here, but basically the knee muscles need to co-contract. And in this case, the knee muscles are the quadriceps and the hamstrings. What I mean by this is that the knee needs to become stiff and almost locked in a specific angle. And this happens by the quadriceps and the hamstrings co-contracting or contracting simultaneously and isometrically to keep the knee in a locked position. Now, if it isn't stiff, what we tend to do is we overextend the knee or we extend the knee too early during gait. And by doing so, we start to overuse the quadriceps and the calf muscles. Now, what's happened here is we've essentially leaked energy. Energy is now being supplied predominantly to the quadriceps and the calf muscles. Very little of it actually gets all the way up to the glutes. Therefore, unfortunately, the glutes are unable to do the job that they're almost perfectly built for, which is essentially to propel us forward. As mentioned, the quadriceps and the calf muscles will begin to overwork and become overloaded to propel us forward, especially during running and walking, which is really what the glutes are made for. And while they can tolerate this for a short while, in the longer term they'll likely become overloaded, and pain usually begins to develop somewhere along the kinetic chain, which can lead to plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendinitis, fat pad syndrome, shin splints, calf strains, etc. So what have the hamstrings really got to do with all this? I'm glad you asked. The lower hamstrings control a lot of what happens at the knee. Now, if they're weak, they won't be able to stop that extension or that early extension we talked about before. So essentially, if the distal hamstrings, the lower hamstrings aren't sufficiently strong enough, we'll miss out on that co-contraction around the knee, that ability to create stiffness around the knee, and therefore we'll lose the ability to utilize the glutes because energy will be leaked, it won't make its way to the glutes. So it's not that the glutes are weak or switched off, although in essence they sort of are, but that's because of the hamstrings. And even if your physiotherapist gets you doing lots and lots of glute work, which there's no issue with that, but if we're not doing the hamstring work that we need to be doing, the glutes can't even be used in the first place. So it's almost wasted effort, the solution. Now, I'm going to be purposefully reductionist here. And essentially, you need to do lots and lots of long lever hamstring exercises. Things like mid to long lever bridges in different angles, at different velocities and different loads. Nordic curls, razor curls. And we're going to be looking to hold these long lever positions for relatively long periods of time because that's essentially what we need, that isometric stationary position to create that contraction around the knee. Now, once we're able to do that in a supine or a laying down position, we can then take it to a standing position where we start to introduce slouch movements that I'm a huge fan of. Dave O'Sullivan, David Gray really sort of push these to the mainstream, and they're really good to sort of get that transfer of force from the foot into the knee, into the hip. And if we get this right, if we do these movements well, that's when we start to get on top of these pains of the lower limb, and that's when we get you back to high level sport without pain.